Hello there, dear viewer, and welcome to haQ. My name is Jakob. I'm your host, and you're watching a haQ episode. And in this episode, I'm going to get into the concept of SuperSaw or SuperSaw sounds. It's a type of sound that I've been using a lot lately because I've been working with something called cyberpunk-esque like music. And if you want to know more about why I'm doing that and how I got into it and stuff, I did actually talk about it in the video I posted before this one, which I'm hoping that you go watch because not many saw it, and it's a really good video. It's one of my best actually, and so yeah, I want as many people as possible to see it. Before we get into anything, I want you to have a listen to this. Understanding the fundamentals and the basic processes of certain types of sounds and the workings of a synth, it empowers you to make the sounds that you want to make. And so that's what I'm hoping to do in this episode. Now I'm going to be using Poison 202 for this first demonstration because it has two oscillators, which is all I need to really demonstrate the basics of this. But then it also does have a SuperSaw mode, which makes it easy to make the SuperSaw lead sound. Hey, a quick note here, this SuperSaw mode, what it really is it's a unison mode with a preselected Sawtooth waveform. And so Jim Audio calls it a SuperSaw mode because he's tweaked this to do the SuperSaw sound perfectly. And it really does. However, some people might not understand at all what I'm talking about here. Voice doubling, unison mode, we'll get into that, don't worry. Right now, I've got this patch initialized, so there are no extra settings being added here, no effects, just a simple saw waveform being played by the first oscillator. And the second oscillator sounds like this. It sounds exactly the same because both oscillators have a saw waveform selected. Both oscillators are running at the same pitch, same hertz, same speed. Alright, so you probably noticed an increase in amplitude, in volume, when I was moving over from oscillator 1 to oscillator 2, because this balance knob is like a mix knob between two levels, the output of oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. And when we moved to the middle, we got an increase in amplitude. Why? Well, because we are playing the same waveform at the same amplitude, at the same pitch, same frequency. All we're gonna get is a louder output. If we want something to happen, we're gonna have to change something. When it comes to SuperSaw sounds, the only thing you really need to touch is the pitch. So we're gonna keep oscillator 1 at the same pitch, but we are gonna mix with the fine tuning of oscillator 2. And as you can hear, we're getting a change in phasing almost, and that's because one oscillator is now moving at a different frequency. Let me demonstrate. I'm going to switch this over to oscillator 2, and I'm going to play around with the fine tuning. And what you're going to see is when I'm moving the fine tuning up in pitch, you're going to see that the waveform in the oscilloscope gets kind of squashed together. And when I move it down in pitch, it kind of gets stretched out. Now I'm going to detune both oscillators. And now we have the beginning of a SuperSaw lead. Alright, so what we've actually done here is we've created a two-voice unison mode. Meaning with every note we play, we're actually playing two voices at the same time. So a unison mode is what you're looking for when you want to make the SuperSaw sound really quickly. But it's not that straightforward, because not all unison modes are created equally. And this is actually important when you're trying to make SuperSaw sounds, because the resulting sound in a synthesizer very much depend on how this unison mode is set up. So a unison mode makes this type of patch making very simple. However, if you don't have access to that, well, now you know how it works. You can always set it up in a synth yourself. I'll explain more as we move along, but back to the tutorial, because what we need now is way more oscillators, way more waveforms, each of them being detuned in their own way, and we're gonna get that SuperSaw sound. And there is actually an option for that inside the synth. And so if we go to the balance knob and turn this over to oscillator 1, so we can only hear one oscillator, I've reset the fine tune. We switch this over to SuperSaw mode, and I'm gonna do this. Now, we're getting a slightly weirder sound, but we get that increase in amplitude, just as we did when we mixed both oscillator 1 and 2 together when they were playing the same waveform at the same pitch. Well, listen to what happens when we start detuning them. And there we go, a SuperSaw sound. And now you get the basics behind this. So what we're doing is we're adding a bunch of voices, a bunch of waveforms, and they're all getting slightly detuned in various ways. Now there is more to this, and it has to do with how the detuning is set up inside a unison mode inside a synthesizer. Because in the case of Poison 202, as I said before, the SuperSaw mode is a unison mode with a preselected Sawtooth waveform, and so it's been tweaked for that. But not only that, the detuning kind of works like fine-tuning for each and every one of the voices. Now, in other synthesizers, you might not get fine-tuning with the detuning control. You see, it might be set up to tune in seminotes or even octaves, and those won't work that well for a SuperSaw sound. You need it to work like fine-tuning. And for me, the best results have been with synthesizers that can do this detuning, where you can go from the fundamental root note and tune stuff up until you almost get into an entire seminote up or down in pitch, and then move slightly below that. Because I like detuning it up so much that the whole sound goes kind of sour, and then pull it back from there until I get the sound I like. Now, I like creating SuperSaw sounds with a specific character to them, but in order to explain that, I need to demonstrate something. Now, something that would be really awesome is if we could go into the synth engine and just control each and every one of the voices and maybe modulate them. And here's where we hit a limit with Poison 202, because we can go to the LFO section and start messing around with the pitch. But it's gonna mess around with all of the pitch. By the way, that's a pretty nice sound. Well, I want to go in and mess with each and every one of the voices in our SuperSaw. And there is this synth called Photo4. It's an older synth. The power of this synthesizer is how much control it gives you over how the multiple voices can drift in pitch and attract each other in pitch, align in pitch, push each other away in pitch. And it's got the most beautiful interface for that, or visualization for it. Right now I'm playing one voice. Now you can increase this to an incredible number as long as you're running this at one polyphony. So right now we're gonna go up to 100, but I'm gonna pull down on the volume here. We're getting a very boring sound here because we're not getting all of the voices to move around or being detuned. That's all gonna happen inside the flock page. So first, we're gonna increase the speed. Now you can already hear that this synthesizer is doing something very differently than what Poison 202 did. And this is the strength of this synthesizer. You can hear that the pitch isn't staying the same. Listen to what happens when I increase the speed. It does this thing that it does with Poison 202 when you're detuning something, but you can hear that it sounds more organic because each and every one of the voices are drifting way more. It sounds kind of like a bee swarm. And let's pull down on the speed. The synthesizer is beautiful and it sounds great. Now, we can add some attraction, which means that each of these voices or each of these bee things, well, they're gonna attract each other. So we're gonna do this, and you can see that they're starting to get together, meaning they're closer in pitch now. And if we also repel them at the same time, pull down on attraction, they're gonna start pushing each other away. Now, the whole point of this exercise with Photo4 was to demonstrate a type of SuperSaw sound that I really like. And in order to make a sound like that, we need to have the ability to have the voices drift in pitch individually. You see, when we tried to modulate the pitch inside Poison 202 earlier, we got the entire pitch for all of the voices to move in the same way at the same time, ending up in something that sounded more like a vibrating pitch. And you know, it's a great sound, but that's not what we're looking for. So if you like the type of dystopian sounding SuperSaw sound that so many music producers are now using in retrowave, synthwave, and cyberpunk-like music, well, you need that individual drift for all of the voices. And so you should be looking for synthesizers that give you that functionality. Well, when it comes to pitch drifting, Photo4 is a master of it, and it gives you a huge amount of voices and a huge amount of control over the pitch drift. But it isn't perfect, because there is one more element that can make a sound like this really stand out, and that is when you have the ability to spread out the voices in the stereo spectrum. And Photo4 can't really do that. Now, you can add effects externally like reverb and delay and simulate a stereo field. However, if you really want to make stereo-like SuperSaw sounds with drifting pitch, well, we're gonna have to go for another synthesizer. Magellan 2 by Yonak is a great synthesizer, and it is basically everything that Magellan 1 was, but it has been improved upon and upgraded with AUV3 support. Now, right here you can find that unison mode that you want for your SuperSaws, and you can use this for doing stuff like that, and it sounds great. However, that unison section doesn't have a stereo spread. But if we look down here, we find something called Maximizer. And this is also a unison mode, a voice doubler, but the drift works differently, and on top of it, it has a stereo spread control. And I want you to listen to what happens when I tweak this. Afterwards, I'm gonna show you something cool with the drift though. You know that THX sound that you can sometimes hear at the beginning of movies? Yeah, I know, it's so nice. Okay, so I've got more recommendations for synthesizers that you can use to make SuperSaw sounds with. And you've already seen what Poison 202 by Jim Audio can do. You've also seen what Photo4 can do, and before I really recommend that one, the problem is though that it doesn't work properly because of the IAA protocol acting weirdly, okay? I can't get it to work properly. I can't get it to stay connected to AUM for long when I switch between apps and Cubasis and other apps that I'm using, and I just wish that this one would get modernized and get put into an AUV3 format, because it would be a shame to see the synthesizer go, because I love this synthesizer. I've been using it for a long time. Everything I've just said could change in the future. So always make sure you check the date on which this video was uploaded. Sometimes things change and the developer might update this in a month or two. So other than Poison 202 and Photo 4, you've also seen what Magellan 2 can do. And I do recommend that synthesizer highly. It comes with a bunch of sounds and there's so much synthesis in it that you can do. Now, other than those three, I would also recommend iMonopoly by Korg. It's got a great unison mode, and the synthesizer even gives you something called analog drift. And that is cool because when you're using the analog drift, the synthesizer or the voicing tuning moves around more like Photo 4. Not as much as it does in Photo 4, but it gives you movement. Another synthesizer that has a unison mode with an analog drift and a great sound to it is Xeon Synth by Beep Street, the same guy who made Drambo. So Xeon Synth is definitely something I recommend. Now, the thing with that one though is that the analog drift is only so slight. It's such a small drift, you hardly even notice it sometimes. But it's a very fat synth and I do recommend it. Now, if you want to hear how it sounds when a unison mode only spreads the detuning in seminotes, go and check out Sunriser Synth, also by Beep Street, because that one does it just like that. And there you go. I need to stretch. SuperSaw is a very straightforward concept, and the only thing you're doing is taking this one waveform, multiplying it, and then just moving the pitch around for all of them, and you get this sound. Now, there are many more ways you can make SuperSaw sounds. There's this contrived way where you're using this one synth, and then you multiply it, and you do different settings within each of them, and then you get a SuperSaw sound. It takes a long time to do, and I don't even recommend doing it. So why did I do it? Thank you so much for watching. All comments and ratings are very much appreciated. And if you like this episode, if you want to see more like it, give me a thumbs up, and also share this video with people out there. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down. If you want to support me in a financial way, you've got these links here on the side. And that's pretty much it. As usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it. You probably didn't know this, but my most favorite animals are penguins and ducks. Also frogs and toads, but really, penguins are so awesome. And ducks, oh, I love them. They have little floppy feet, and look at this head. Just look at that head. It's so cute. It's so cute.